we might as well do the introductions live, and then it's not so much repeating ourselves. So why don't you firstly, for those of you who are listening, we will be kicking off in earnest in a bit. Hi, Stellian and Eleanor are here with us. We had Zoe and Helen. They had other things to do. They've gone away. More for them.
You scared them off with your greetings.
I know. I really need to tone it down. My kids are just, they've been slating me for doing these things. It's like, Daddy, why the false laugh?
Yeah, okay, you go to school. Thank you very much. That's enough.
Like, all I hear is you laughing, like really fakely in the other room, Daddy. Okay, whatever.
So rude, children.
Very rude. I know, kids, just entitled. Back in the day.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we kick off, Ben, why don't you give a brief introduction to Nicola for, just so she gets a better feel for who you are and what you do at the moment?
Okay, dokes. Well, hello, Nicola.
Hello, Ben.
So yes, as Carla said, I also have done. Are you still doing the 2020 program, or have you done it?
Well, we have our ceremony today.
Oh, so you are soon to be released into the world.
Soon to be graduates.
Yes. So I graduated, gown and certificate and all of the necessary accompaniments. Probably about this time last year, I guess. So we were the early part of last year, and I've known Carlos and Lawrence for a few years now, mainly kind of via Brighton circles. So I also live in Brighton, and had kind of met them a few years ago, not long after selling my last company, and have sort of spent kind of several years kind of sort of flouncing around, quite a few false starts, few cul-de-sacs, trying a few different things. Some things worked out, some things not worked out. And now I do a range of different things. So one, these things with Carlos, these kind of webinars, and we also run a training program, Happy Pricing, which was really a kind of one of the sort of takeaways I got from 2020 was actually the opportunity to start taking some of the stuff that was in my head and just getting it out into the world, as much to create some more space in my head for new things to start to come in. And so one of the bits of knowledge which was useful to get out of my head was a lot of this information around kind of money and pricing, because it had been a really important part of how I'd run my last business, was kind of really understanding the role that kind of money played and the role that price played in kind of how easy it was or not for people to choose to work with us. So when we're selling things to clients, what role money and price plays. And so I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about that and kind of working with that. And like I said, that had become an important part of how we ran the business. And then coming out of the 2020 program, for me, this idea of actually, just starting to take some of the things that were in my head and get them out into the world, like I said, maybe to kind of create space for new things to come in. And this pricing endeavor, this little pricing adventure, is one of those things. So I do this, and then there's a range of other things. I also partly own a platform that provides meditation courses, and I also do work with a number of other kind of businesses in a one-to-one capacity. So a kind of whole range of different things, this being one.
Nice one, Ben.
You're a busy man.
Pardon?
You're a busy man.
Well, actually, no. Actually, I'm not very busy, intentionally. I really don't like being very busy, so I am not too busy.
And then the umbrella of all of this, for me anyway, the context I have is Buddha in the boardroom, and this is the story and the I understood about Ben's work around how do we bring that kind of mentality, that kind of way of looking at the world to the world of business, and the way I see what Ben's doing, particularly with the pricing, is this is just like a sliver of a wider thing. But I saw an opportunity to actually put this out into the world and with us, because I think it's a useful thing, and I think it is in service to the wider mission and the broader things that he likes to do. And given that as well, I thought there's a connection here, I think, with you. So Nicola, maybe a little bit of an introduction about you, what you do, and anything that you feel that is relevant for this conversation.
Okay. So I predominantly have worked in people and talent as a professional career, and then I also qualified as a psychotherapist. I'm an integrative psychotherapist. So the reason I did that, I mean, it's very easy to say, well, because I work in people and talent, I'm really interested in people. But the truth is that I had a really positive experience myself going through therapy. And it kind of gave me a kernel of an idea of maybe one day could I possibly do that. So while I worked full time, I did a master's in psychotherapy and had 3 children. So yeah, that was interesting. But the lens was always where I made most of my money was in the people and talents. I kind of raised through the ranks and ended up as chief people officer for communications and advertising holding company. And then last year, I've kind of switched that around. So I'm now more about psychotherapy, coaching, and doing some consultancy work. But I came up with this, again, as part of the process, as part of the Happy Startup, I came up with this kernel of an idea of if I could weave together what my commercial experience, the fact that I've been doing psychotherapy and also energy, psychology for a number of years now, and the pandemic, the fact that now people are beginning to come back into the real world, whatever that is, and in more and more frequently, we're going to be meeting people again, we're going to be traveling again, and there's going to be pressure from companies to get their people back. So how can I support people through using energy to help them to feel more in control? So whether that's they're on the tube again and somebody's not wearing a mask, well, that might all go by the wayside, the mask bit, but somebody's acting strangely, or they're in a boardroom and somebody's thrown them off their game, or the kids are driving them mad, or just and as a daily practice as well. So I've developed a taster session. And then from that, I am developing different courses depending on what the need is, because I can flex it accordingly. So I think there's different kind of layers to my offering. It's a portfolio of things that I can do. But I guess for the purpose of this session, it's really concentrating on those energy programs and potential one-to-one coaching around that.
Brilliant. Cool. So there's something that you want to offer, you have an offering that you believe in, and you're just trying to understand how to put a number onto that thing when you approach the client, so that makes sense as something that they would buy, and something that also would mean it's worthwhile for you, I would assume as well. You know, there's a reason that you want to do that, other than just create some benefit for these people. For those of you listening, we're going to follow this kind of broad structure. The way I put it, Ben's kind of like inspired me to put this into a structure. We're going to start with who, this idea of like, okay, who are these people that you want to serve? What do you get an understanding of these clients? What is it what problems are they facing? What problems are they needing to solve? You know, we're going to talk about the good feelings and solutions that they may be looking for. Why? And when I say why, is like, why would I spend money on this? What is it that's, you know, as Ben puts it, what's the cost of not doing this work? And so we're going to tackle that as a little exploration, and then we'll talk about how much.
Yeah.
So it's a liberal way: who, what, why, and how. I thought it was as a way of expressing that. So I'm going to hand over to Ben, and maybe, I don't know, prompt for some questions around the who.
Thanks, Carlos. And I'm going to hand over to Nicola, because actually the most important view here is kind of Nicola's. So I guess within the sort of rough framework which Carlos sort of set out there, I think, Carlos, did you say first who was first?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I think we know who she is.
Yeah.
Do you though? Do you really?
Oh, I think that's a whole different podcast.
So I guess I'm kind of curious in the first instance, who, you know, because I know you're talking about you're exploring different things, maybe selling to companies, maybe selling to individuals within companies. But I think we were sort of going to talk about the selling to companies as a focus for this conversation. And so I'm kind of curious, you know, is there a certain type of who? What kind of companies might you want to be selling to?
I was going to tap my network. So I've worked predominantly for the last 15 years in creative agencies, the creative industry. So the alumni of people that I've worked with are now all sitting as founders, CEOs, ECDs, senior HR people. And so I was going to use my network that way and go directly to the people that are the decision makers that hold the budgets, and talk to them about the need. And then the second who would be obviously the participants. Mm-hmm. So my first focus isn't about building a community and seeing who comes. It's more about going directly to companies and saying, I believe this is a need for you. These are the reasons why, and this is what I can do. So that was my initial thought.
And so within the network, is there a sort of typical size of those agencies, or is there quite divergent? Some very small, some very big.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a session next Wednesday, and they're an agency of 10 people. And I guess that also depends on whether it's actually in person or whether it's online, because obviously online, at the moment it feels like it can be anywhere, anyone at any time. Whereas if it's in a building somewhere, depending on restrictions as well about space, etc., then that might limit numbers. So for me, the agencies that I've worked with predominantly have been a combination of probably the smallest agency's been about 25 people, and the largest agency's been a couple of hundred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so they kind of in kind of money terms, their revenues of everything from like a few million to tens of millions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So quite diverse, quite a range in there.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's some understanding of the kind of who. So sort of explain to me again the kind of need as you see it. What's the problem that is being solved?
I think the problem is that over the last 16 months, I don't think anyone can say they're having the best life. I think we all kind of go through this spectrum of from flourishing to languishing, and then to being some people have been really in trouble and had some serious mental health problems and challenges. So I'm interested in the languishing spot. I'm interested in from a productivity, from a creativity, from a general well-being. That's the ask. I think that's the why. So that you're asking your people to come back together, and they've had a tough time, and I think there's a moment in time now where they're looking at their lives thinking, how am I going to do this all again? Because I believe that we were all a bit on autopilot before the pandemic. I certainly was. I would just get up in the morning and throw myself at the day, and I was out of my house from 8 in the morning till 7 at night, and whatever came, and that's where I was. And I'd get on the packed tube with the Victoria line, and I would just shut myself down and tolerate it. And I think now a lot of people are looking at that going, I don't want to do that anymore. And I don't know any company that's requiring their people to come back 5 days a week. So there's a real opportunity of hybrid working, and there's a real opportunity of reconnection. So I think for me, it's the why of, you want your people to feel that they're thought about, they're cared for, that the bigger companies will have a wellness program in place anyway. They will have a budget against that. This is a way of having a marker to say, we do care about you, we do think about you. Here's something we can do together. Let's learn some tools to be better mentally, physically, productively, creatively. And you can take those away, and you can do them yourself as well. You don't need somebody there to coach you through it. Mm-hmm. So that's my belief. And I've obviously asked around. It's not like I've sort of sat in isolation of my bedroom and gone, what do I think? So that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing from the people that I'm talking to. And, as I go out to market, I'll find out more and more.
Cool. And is probably a question would have been useful for us to ask actually at the beginning. Is the main thing that you're kind of wrestling with now is just trying to understand broadly what kind of number you might put on this work?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I can do that. But I mean, there's other people in the market, so there's competitors out there. But I feel that I have a different offering because of my commercial background and my psychotherapy background, and then the energy work that I'm doing. So it's kind of a combination of everything. So I can see this I already do energy work with my therapy clients, so I can see this as a coaching model on a one-to-one basis. I can also see it as workshops. I can see it as a taster session, and then ultimately I'd like to digitalize it and bring a community together that way. But first of all, I really want to test it out in the real world with real people, get some real feedback, get some testimonials, and then and then iterate, and then go again. So that's the idea.
And just out of curiosity, if we kind of went to the end of the thing that we were talking about, to the money bit, how would you start thinking about the money bit? What would be your start point for that?
I think depending on what product we're talking about. So if we're talking about one-to-one, then I'd look at my time. So what I would cost my time out at. If we're looking at a workshop, I guess I'd look at time and participation, how many participants are being covered for this amount of money. And then a taster session will be a shorter version, it's 45 minutes. So it's less of my time, whereas a 2-hour workshop. So I guess it's a combination of time and how many people are attending.
Ben's going to have some thoughts on that.
Sorry?
You're going to have some thoughts on that.
Well, it's always just kind of curious. So, I mean, how would you work out your time? What's your time worth?
I kind of worked it out on a salary, what my salary was and what I expect. And that's a kind of a starter for 10. And then, because also what I'd like to do once I digitalize it is be able to gift the program to people that couldn't afford it as well. So there's that piece to it, but I need to get it right first of all. So that's how I thought, what's my time worth? It also depends on what I'm learning. So the taster session on Wednesday, the deal is that they give me honest, open feedback and some testimonials. So that's a slightly different relationship. I need to get it tested out in the real world, and because they're supporting me in that way, then obviously the cost is very much reduced compared to when I feel that it actually that's the right product, and let's go now. So
because the thing is, like, sort of even basing it on the sort of salary, what if the work is worth much more than that? What happens then?
Yeah, I mean that is the goal is that I earn more than I did. But I think in this kind of testing phase and establishment phase, then I'm thinking about, it's a combination of what am I learning from this experience? What can I get from this experience in ways of, product testimonials and learning for me, because I'm learning as well, because I want to iterate it and make it right. But yeah, the ultimate goal is that, I earn more than I did, for sure.
Because I guess the thing is, for different, given that you sort of articulated there are different sizes of company. So in some respects, the cost of the problem varies for each of those companies. And so to what extent do you think it's important to reflect that in the conversations you're having with them commercially? And I guess this is about thinking beyond like these first couple where you feel like you are sort of getting the credentials and the testimonials, although there's probably worth having a conversation around that. But in terms of when this is a kind of functioning thing in the marketplace, to what extent do you see the value of what you're doing differs to different companies?
I think it would be more about the budget that they have. And exactly as you say, I mean, I know that the bigger companies are going to have a bigger budget, and the smaller companies per person are going to have a smaller budget. So again, it's how I package it, and whether it's a experience where we're all together in a room, and then of course there's travel costs and there's potential hiring of rooms, etc., compared to if we're all meeting virtually, where the cost is minimal. So yeah, I think that's a good point around. For me, it's the budget that I'm walking into as well. And how many people I can and what the format of the session is, so how many people I'm reaching, because that's what they'll be thinking. When I was talking to somebody recently and they had a similar thing, and it was virtual, and they invited clients. So it was a good experience of the team and the clients having the same experience. That's quite a bonding experience. So for them, it wasn't only their wellness program budget, it was also their, in a way, client entertainment, client experience budget. So I think that, there's different. I know because I was the person that used to have the budget, of all the different pots that agencies have, and who controls those pots, and who has a say in how they get dispensed. And if you can start dialing it up to, well, it's going to be a client experience, and it's going to be the team and the clients together, then I think that's a different pot gets opened.
So that's interesting. So that's potentially a kind of useful sort of segue to the one of the things that which Carlos mentioned earlier, and we sort of talk about in the course, is that so clients are only ever buying two things. They're buying good feelings and solutions to problems. And so you kind of articulated a few of those things there. We're kind of interested to sort of explore that a little bit more. So you kind of, one of the examples you gave there is, yes, there are the kind of immediate things for team, and then there are other instances where clients might be bought in too. But if we were just to explore that idea that clients are buying good feelings and solutions, what would be some of those would be some of those good feelings and or sort of solutions that you think that clients are buying?
Well, I think clients are facing the same challenges that we've already kind of talked about. So they are also going back to their office spaces, and they're also going back to some form of hybrid working. They haven't probably seen their agency in person for a long time. And so I think they are buying the same solutions that the agency is buying, which is getting the team together, making people feel thought about and cared for, thinking about people's productivity, thinking about people's wellness, physical and mental well-being. So I think it's the same thing. I think when you put them together in a room, then it can slightly be different. It might be more of I hesitate to say team building, but it is a moment of connection where they're all going through a similar experience, and therefore something they can refer to afterwards.
But even so, if you just take, sorry, go on.
No, I just said just having had that experience together.
So one of the things you're saying there around sort of team building, but I guess so as a budget holder, which you've been in the past, so I'm curious how you bought things and how you made decisions on who you were buying, what you were buying, and how much of your budget you were willing to spend. What was the sort of process you went through in terms of how you managed your budget?
Well, there was a central budget, which was a group budget, which I held, and then there were individual agencies would have their own budget. So I would look at what is the business need, and also find out what do people need as well, what are they interested in, and then scope out a program around that. So yeah, when you're holding the budget, it is about business need. It is about what do we think is needed in order for our people to be more effective, and then it's also, some people might bring things to us, like they might have a curiosity or a friend or a knowing, or even themselves be a practitioner in something, and we would help and support them do that. So it would be, to answer your question, it would be business need first.
Yeah, and I'm curious. So I used to run an agency, and so in terms of kind of selling to people who have a budget, right? So obviously, it's some instances you kind of have, in your instance, you have some understanding of what the budgets are, but of course, the person who is holding the money, they in many instances will not want to share how much that they have spent. Obviously, you have some insight around that, but I also know that even where somebody says that there is a budget, as the seller, so running an agency, that for me is a start point. So you have a budget, there is this. So you could do what you want for that, or you could invest and do this. And the thing that I would find in those dialogues is oftentimes they may say the budget starts there, but actually the opportunity is to go here. And I'm kind of curious what your view is about what that might mean for you.
Where I'm at the moment, I can very much tailor a program depending on what the business need is. And so, yeah, that's really where I'm coming from at the moment. So I've done the taster program. I've got the content for that. And that's me. That's my content that I think will be useful. It's a combination of giving kind of scientific facts as well as a lived experience of the things that I'm talking about. So people go away with at least something that they can refer to. And then there are different ways that I can go depending on what the business need is. So I can, we can do a 2-hour workshop. We could do a number of workshops that do a build. So if they build knowledge. We can do a 4-hour workshop. So it's really depending on what I'm being asked as to then how I would price it. And that's kind of, I think, where I am at the moment with my idea. Were you going to say something, Carlos?
I just wanted to, for the benefit of myself as much as anything else, but also people listening, just a little bit of a summary of the journey we've been on with this conversation, as I understand it. There's Ben asked, how would you come up with a price? And the kind of the two key answers that came out from me were time and participants. Mm-hmm. And then, Ben said, right, how would you value your time? And you have an idea of your salary, and then you've broken it down into an hourly rate. Then you talked about budgets and as the budget holder, what you think about. And you said, okay, actually it's the business benefit. Yeah.
Yes.
And so there's this other kind of number floating around budget. There's 3 numbers in my head now. There's the how much you'd like to earn based on time and materials. Mm-hmm. How much there's this budget that the company might have, and then there's this business benefit figure somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to reflect on, actually, on one level you can be talking about time and materials, and on another level you can talk about what is the business benefit and value. Mm. So for those of you, that's the arc that I think we're following here in terms of, and then you said about tailoring.
Yeah.
So there's tailoring a solution to a broad selection of clients.
Yeah.
And so there's no one price.
Not at this stage. No.
Well, actually, maybe that's the next question. Is there ever just one price?
I don't think so, because I think it also, as I said earlier about, what's the benefit for me as well. So the benefit for me engaging with someone, with an agency who might then say, do you know what, I know clients who would be really interested in this. So you give us, if you give it to us for whatever, then, so there's always, I think there's always going to be, I don't think there is going to be one price. I think there's always going to be a consideration of what the benefit is for both parties.
I kind of and thanks for that summary, Carlos, because I think that was sort of kind of neatly done and important to sort of encapsulate that. So I'm just kind of curious, even with the ones you're testing out now. So give me a sort of kind of paint a picture of the sort of size and type of agency who you're going to do one of these first trial things with.
So they're a creative agency, and they're 10 people.
10 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what is there? And so there's like a sort of couple of million sort of pounds worth of sales going on there, or sort of less than that?
To be really honest, I didn't ask the founder what's your turnover, but yes, I would say probably that would be true. And they've been established for about 4 years now.
Mm-hmm. And so when you were just sort of talk me through the conversation that you had with them to seed the idea, even if it's kind of going back over what you told me earlier. I'm curious, like, sort of connect where the connection was in terms of kind of understanding of the problem.
Yeah, so it's somebody within my network, and I know that he runs a wellness program for his people. For instance, they do yoga as a team twice a month. So therefore, I thought that he would be somebody who would be open to this type of session. So what I did was I pitched it to him and his HR person, and just gave them kind of an outline and gave them a bit of a lived experience of it, which they said, yeah, that would be great. And then we got a diary date, which is next Wednesday. So on the understanding as well that I would be very open with their people, saying that this is something that, it's a taster session, it's something I'm trialing out. It'd be great to get your honest feedback and use some of the feedback as testimonials going forwards. So that I was very open and transparent, and will be open and transparent with participants of the workshop as well about my go in with this.
Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of curious though, do you think that that people would not be honest if they were paying what felt like a kind of higher price? What's the relationship between kind of honesty of feedback and what they're paying?
It's for me, it's more about that I will be asking them for testimonials. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where the honesty bit comes in. It's like, up front, guys, I expect, I expect that there will be some feedback coming back, and I don't mind the quality of that feedback. But it's also, it's also to be open about where I am on my journey with this
Mm-hmm.
as well. That it's not a polished, finished article, because it isn't, or a session.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people are, particularly if it's virtual, I think people are honest. They might be less honest to your face in person,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know me, so why not be, but it was more about setting up at the beginning of the session my ask of them, I guess.
Yeah. And so for a company like that, sort of 10 people, what the kind of question which Carlos mentioned, what's the sort of cost of not doing work like this? What would not change for them if this taster session, if this type of engagement didn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is they have a wellness program, so it is content for that program. So I guess potential cost is you need to go. You kind of, your people have an expectation of certain content on a regular basis, so then you need to go and find some other content. So I'm bringing it to you, and I'm known to you. So I guess I have my, not necessarily in this environment, but I'm known and have a reputation. So that's kind of, you should be in good hands. And I get for the bit that was interesting, that they went, oh, that's interesting. That was when I talked about helping their people, because they talked about, oh, we had this guy come in and we did some breath work and whatever. And I was like, and great, that was a great experience. And what has anyone taken from it? What are you now using? And they were like, oh, no, it was just an experience, and off they went again. And I was like, well, for me, it's about equipping people. It's about giving people tools so that they can then go away and use this themselves. It's not complicated. It's immediate. And of course, with practice, you get better, but you certainly don't need to study and study and study in order to be able to do this work and feel the benefit of it. So for them, it was like giving. So the cost is not giving their people a tool that they can use in real time, in reference to a client, in reference to a team experience. So that would be, I guess, the cost.
I just wanted to reflect on that, because you talked about the cost of not going with you, for instance. You talked about content. So, they're already doing yoga twice a month. So at the moment, in my eyes, that's immediately, okay, what does yoga cost? What do you cost? So that's one thing that springs to mind. And then in terms of loss, what's the cost? What I actually heard there for me was time to find someone else. So what's the cost in terms of finding someone else? And the risk of getting the wrong person. What's the cost involved in that? And then the other thing that I heard there, where you're talking about the benefits of learning a practice, but I didn't hear you tie it to what you said before, was the benefits to the business.
Okay, I think I said that I would give people tools that they can use in relation to whether in their client, whether they're in teams, in their teamwork, etc. So that would be the benefit to the business, that it would help people. So say someone's about to do a presentation, or they're in a presentation and they're stumbling and they're off their course, or a client is particularly aggressive towards them and they're like floundering. To be able to bring yourself back to and ground yourself and then push through and win the business is a real win.
So sales, client retention, customer service.
Yeah. That
for me sounds like a very clear business benefit that is a consequence of learning some skills.
Yeah.
And there's a cost, or there's a number potentially tied to that.
Yeah. There's a big number if you lose that pitch. Yeah.
That makes being able to not lose a pitch quite valuable.
Yeah. I think that's another workshop, isn't it? Writing that one down.
Yeah, and I think that what Carlos saying is kind of important, because I think the thing, just sort of exploring in a sort of roundabout way, everything that sort of Carlos is saying there, because I think there's a number of things which are kind of happening, which when you speak to people, whether they are known people in your network or not in your network, actually it doesn't matter so much, is that there is a whole, what something is worth is a subjective thing. And yes, there is budget constraint, which determines to a degree what somebody is willing to spend, but only to a degree. So that's one level, the amount that somebody thinks that they have to spend. Then there is also how badly they want a problem solved. And so, like, using the example that sort of Carlos helpfully illustrated there, if for an agency, whether you're an agency of 10 people, whether you're an agency of 100 people or whatever, if anxiety around pitch, for example, is, a thing which a founder recognizes has been an issue, clearly making that issue go away is a hugely important thing. And so to the point around the need, there is always a problem, of course, that they want to go away. And the problem might be relatively minor, i.e. I've got a wellness program and I need to fill it up with content. But I think you are doing yourself a huge disservice if that actually is the motivation. That might be something which kind of tweaks the conversation. But the problems that you're solving, as Carlos kind of pointed out there, are potentially really material. And, there's that one around pitches. There's the cost of talent retention, which you all know really well, and whether people are sick or stressed or going away or needing to be replaced. Because, of course, there's budgets to replace staff and all of these sorts of things. And I think the kind of point that sort of Carlos kind of had is that it's these things which are the real kind of motivators for people to act. And it's kind of less on the kind of stage maybe we are now, where it sort of sounds a little bit like is you feel like you're asking a favor in some respects, because you're going to people and but actually you don't need to be asking a favor. You're bringing to bear all of your kind of huge sort of expertise and experience in a really sort of powerful way. And I think connecting that to those things that they are actually, the classic, what's keeping them up at night, the kind of founder, the owner. And it might be this thing around pitching. It might be a thing around talent. It might, any number of things, of course. But the kind of challenge and the opportunity is to connect the work that you're doing to those things. And the more that you do that, of course, you open up this sort of spectrum of possibility, where at the lower end is what the budget is likely to be. And then at the upper end is, well, what actually is the cost to them of solving that problem? And within that range is the kind of is the kind of money conversation, essentially.
Yeah. Like that.
Oh, you're muted, Carlos. Only on Crowdcast, not in live.
God, professional here. I told you this is amateur hour. This reflection I have at a broader level of just the startup journey that that springs to mind is there's this idea of like products, problem, solution, fit. So have I got a solution that actually solves a really valuable problem? And then there's product market fit. Do I have like a revenue model that's actually going to be sustainable and that can actually grow to a level that's going to be beneficial to me? And you're at that stage, I think, of just the product market fit versus problem solution fit boundary. You're still trying to see, all right, what's the, like Ben, I think, was indicating there are problems around the practice. There are problems around understanding the content that you provide, but there's also problems around the customer and the business benefits that you are also trying to address. And there's this kind of dance that you're trying to see, how do I match what I want to do to something that they understand? And I think the thing I'm trying to get across is, like, I believe sometimes we have an assumption that customers know how much something should cost. And actually, the shift that I believe Ben is trying to get across with a lot of the stuff that we're doing here and the pricing was that it is incumbent on us to educate or help our customers understand the value of our work. They don't necessarily hold the number in their heads. What they do is they hold the wisdom of the problem. They know the understanding of their business. They understand exactly where they want to go, but they don't necessarily have a number that ties it to what you could offer them. So that's one thing that I think this, for me, is coming out of this conversation. You know a lot that they don't. And you can tease out a lot of the stuff that they, oh God, yes, of course, it's worth that much. Rather than actually, how much is a yoga class and how much is Nicola going to cost? That, I think, is really a challenging situation there. And then the other thing I think I learned from actually another person in our community called Alan, and this for me is like there's price and then there's cost. There's the number on the actual item, and then there's how much they actually pay. And so just because you're going into somewhere for the first time, or you just try, they don't know you, doesn't necessarily mean the number on the ticket has to be low.
No.
The number on the ticket can still be what you would love to charge, what you believe is the value, but then it's up to you to decide how much you're willing to let them spend on you, depending on the relationship, the quid pro quo, the feedback, the thing it is. But I think for me, there's something around making sure that number is realistic based on the future benefit rather than this kind of initial transaction, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I think as much as anything, just as part of a consideration. But also, which was, if you're, I guess, what was the holding group who you worked with?
Havas.
Right. Okay. So with Havas, if you just take something we spoke about earlier, which was team building, right? So the amount that someone might spend on team building, if I had the Havas board together for 2 days, right, versus if I have a team together for 2 days, like the cost of team building is hugely different. Because of the size of the problem and who's there. And so it's only worthwhile kind of remembering that, just because of course you know that and everybody knows that. But what that talks to is what's the cost of the problem? And there is also expectation, and it's Havas board, and so there's kind of things that kind of go with that. But there is no actual fixed price for things. It really depends. It depends completely on context. It depends completely on ability to spend, but ability to spend is tied to value and all of these, there's all of these other things which come together. And I think I just kind of come back to the thing that we were saying earlier is you have so much expertise and insight that actually these people running their businesses, you can help sort of unlock. That's the thing that is going to motivate people to buy this over and over. And that's the thing which starts to point to what the value is. And that, of course, the thing around that is it's not to say, well, if we do this, you're going to win 20% more pitches. And if you win 20% more pitches, that's another £400,000 worth of income. Therefore, you can pay me 40 and we're all happy. Because, of course, it's, we know that things don't translate that way. But there is still value in exploring that hard money stuff. Because as much of anything, it's a frame of reference. And to Carlos's words, your job actually, all of our job when we are selling anything, which of course we all are all the time, our job is to educate the client and the customer to help them connect what we can do to their problem.
I like that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. If there are any questions for people listening at the moment, please feel free to share in the chat. We had a couple of polls going while we're sort of talking. There's a number of people. There's 4 people here just trying to price a new product or service. So I do hope what we talked about now is going to be helpful to you. And thank you very much, Nicola, for just volunteering to just open up and talk about this stuff, because I think as well as benefit to you, we hope it's going to be benefit to anyone who's listening, because they will identify with this process. And we've had a little poll about how you base the cost of your service, and a couple of people said time, and Tobias has said value. And I just indicate that because at the beginning you were talking about time and number of participants, and I feel like we got to a place where actually that shouldn't be the starting point for you.
Yeah. I think what the point that's just been made about educating the person that's got the budget to actually what the value can be to their business and their people. That's the point. Yeah, rather than getting down to the detail of how many people are in a room and what the time cost is. Yeah.
Nice. And so just to close, is there anything else that you want to reflect on, or you're going to be taking away from this conversation?
I think it's always reassuring, and I thank you, Ben, for hearing, other people say, given that I'm at the beginning of my journey, for other people to say, look, you've got to look at your expertise and your experience and what you're bringing. And it's just really, it's good to hear that, because, I can forget that. So that's good to hear. And thank you for the coaching. That was great, Ben. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate your time.
Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think just on that, because you're not at the beginning of your journey.
This one.
Yeah, but I think it's important, isn't it? Like, it's not divorced from the other one.
No, it's not.
It's a continuation, and that is a really important thing, particularly for people who run their businesses. You want to be surrounded by people with kind of knowledge, experience, and expertise that can help make those kind of, insomnia-inducing problems go away.
Yeah, I know a good breathing exercise for that. I can help with.
There you go. You see?
It reminds me of something on the course, Ben, that you talk about in terms of the different choices people make in terms of buying. Is time. What were the 5 T's? Was it? I can't remember. Team.
The 5 T's, yeah.
Yeah. And so one of them is team. You pay for a particular person, and I think about that because there's something, there is a confidence that you can bring to the table because of you, A, being on the other side of the sort of the fence, B, all of that wealth of experience. So, and maybe this is me just reading into the wrong way. It's like you don't need to be apologetic when going into a company saying, okay, can we try this out? I'd just like to get some feedback. It's like, I believe this, you can do this. This is how it's going to benefit you. First time though. So let's try it out with you because we've got to see. But it feels like there's a lot more behind your work than just let's test this out kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going in apologetically. No, nice. Not at all. So. Yeah.
Cool. Well, really appreciate you kind of sharing where you're at and what you're doing. I'm looking forward to the landing page that will be going live soon.
Yes, we can dialogue about that. Yeah. Good to go. Technically, I just need a bit of help.
It's cool. Well, we can support you there, definitely. I think the last thing I thought I wanted to connect is this idea of educating our customers into the value of the problem and understanding the problem. And I think that starts well beyond we even actually talking to a customer. And this is, we're going to be talking about this on Thursday, about this whole content creation piece. What for people, so what do we put on social media? What content are we creating? And this real icky feeling no one's going to listen to me. For me, it lands talking about these problems and talking about how they can be solved is a content strategy. Because that is the thing that you can either refer people to in terms of if they don't understand why this work is important, or it's that initial building of trust and building of understanding of the value you create, which then helps with the next conversations around, okay, what are we going to do and how much is it you're going to pay me? So, I felt there's a connection there. And this conversation, for instance, actually, even this conversation, I understand a lot more about your work, even though you sent that stuff through in terms of a little brief. This has made it much more clear for me, just hearing you talk about it in that way.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Hey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great rest. Well, I will see you later, Nicola.
We will.
Yes. We will be ceremonizing and graduation stuffing later. And thanks a lot, Ben. Really appreciate this. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Emma and Tim, for your comments. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.